You're joining us in the heart of the Cairngorm Mountains at the beginning of our 145-kilometre river triathlon. I'm Rachel Helliwell from CREW, the Centre of Expertise for Water, and this is my colleague Mark Stutter.
Hello. In celebration of the Year of Coasts and Waters, we're going to take you on a journey along Scotland's most iconic river, the River Dee. As we walk the upper reaches, cycle the middle reaches, and canoe along the river in the lower reaches, we'll discuss the main water issues, challenges and solutions along the way.
So we're going to travel down the Dee, just looking at the environment we're in. We're in a really semi-Arctic, high upland British environment. You can see all the rocks about and the quite thin vegetation. So it's a very active environment. There's very cold temperatures, quite wind-clipped vegetation and thin soils. We think the water here takes about 24 hours to travel the length of the River Dee down to the harbour. So that coincidentally is about the travel time of our 3 stages of our journey. So this bit of water we see here, see you in the harbour in a little while then.
Now we'll talk about some of the issues facing water in the mountains, starting with the impact of climate change on snow.
Snow accumulates much less in the winter time, which means there's less snow feeding the rivers into the summer. Now with less snow melt in the rivers, that means the rivers are low, so there's less base flow in the river, but also they are warming and that has impacts on salmon and trout. So what researchers have been doing is trying to look at how we keep our rivers cool, and one method has been to plant trees along the edge of the river, which shades the river and protects it from the warmer summer temperatures.
If you look around on the valley floor and in the wet areas, flat areas, you'll see build-up of peat soils. Now the peat is quite an important store of carbon in these uplands, but it's also a really important issue to acknowledge that connects the upper part of the river to some of the lower zones. So when that peat, whether through drying of the soil, lowering the water table or warmer temperatures, some of that peat destabilises and you get a flush of what we call dissolved organic carbon. It's that kind of humic tea colour that you see in the natural waters. The issues down the river system are then at water treatment works and places like that where you have to treat water.
So this area is underlain by granite. That means that there are low levels of natural nutrients.
Global changes in nitrogen inputs from the atmosphere as a result of emissions from cars, industry and agriculture are responsible for enhancing the nutrients that these ecosystems receive. However, scientists are keen to understand how climate change might affect the nitrogen stored in mountain soils and vegetation. There's actually already evidence to suggest that nitrogen is leaching to surface waters and shifting the fragile nutrient balance in these sensitive ecosystems.
One aspect here of change is the amount of visitor pressure. We need to maintain areas like this of wilderness. It's the old quandary of having to manage the wilderness and the fragile habitat. So path maintenance, things like that, making sure people camp sensibly.
It's day 2 of our catchment triathlon, and today we're cycling in the easterly direction from Braemar to Park Bridge, and that's about 70 kilometres. You can see already that the river has changed dramatically from what we saw up in the mountains. It's a very active river at this stage, very wide, and actually it's the steepest river in Scotland in terms of the altitudinal drop from its source to the sea. Behind me, this is a really nice example of how the landscape changes from the tops of the mountains, which are actively managed as sporting estates for grouse and for deer. Then as we come down the hillside, we can see significant areas of forestry, and in the valley bottom, a very clear example of how the land, the flat areas, are managed for livestock such as beef cattle and sheep. In response to the climate crisis, Scottish Government has aspirational targets to expand forestry practices in Scotland. The targets are 10,000 hectares per year of forestry, And this is very much moving away from the monoculture forestry to a more mixed forestry with 40% of broadleaves.
One of the issues in this middle zone of the catchment is definitely the steeping sides of the valley can generate quite fast runoff waters. So that, coupled with straightening of burns and compacting of soils, means that there can be quite quick responses to rain events that bring water down to the main channel. This range of flood marks on this fishing hut here at Park Estate shows over a couple of hundred years, a range of different flood heights, and the biggest mark on the whole hut on the corner of the tiles there from December 2015 just shows how big the river was then and how we need to learn to live with a really big, natural, powerful river system. So it's typical around here in this part of the river that scattered rural dwellings are off-grid in terms of their water supply and their wastewater services. So private water supplies need to be resilient to times of less rainfall and lowering the water table that happened in 2018 and again this Easter. So we need to understand measures that can recharge aquifers, and they can often be the same as measures that retain water that help against small floods. So the other thing is the rural wastewater services, and many houses have septic tanks, and we just need to make sure that they're part of a functioning system. They're maybe not directly discharged to a watercourse, they go through a proper soil treatment system that accompanies the tank.
As we embark on the final leg of our journey and canoe from Park Bridge to Aberdeen, the river is flowing fast following the heavy rains that we experienced back in the mountains. In the lower reaches of the catchment, there's significant competition for land in terms of large developments for residential areas, commercial and industrial premises, but also for agriculture.
Here in the lower zone of the river, the land use has gradually intensified to include more arable as well as intensive pasture land, particularly around the floodplains of the river valley and on the valley sides. So there are issues there with soil loss, which becomes sediment and fine silt in the river, and there's also issues with nutrient loss.
One of the many water issues in the city is surface flooding during heavy rain events. This is exacerbated by the construction of impervious surfaces such as roads and car parks. However, novel solutions such as swales, rain gardens and wetlands can help mitigate this issue. And these measures also have wider benefits, including recreational and biodiversity value. Beyond the harbour, coastal erosion is an increasing concern, especially for coastal communities. In response, scientists are trying hard to understand the extent and resilience of coastal flood management in the face of climate change. They're also developing innovative solutions to address this issue.
So that pretty much concludes our journey from the source